Everspace is a roguelike set in space. When you start the game, you'll watch a segment of story, which explains that you have escaped from an evil colonial fleet for unknown reasons. In this opening segment, it is also explained that you have amnesia. From here, as you progress through the game, more of the story is revealed. Now, I won't go into the story, you can find that out for yourselves. However, I will say that it is quite interesting. And on a side note, it's really refreshing to play one of these space sims that could be bothered to write a story.
Who is this?
Okay, so the objective of the game is to get to the end of the 6th sector. Apparently this is where all of our story related questions will be answered. Our protagonist is certain of this because he found a scrap bit of paper on the floor of his ship with these coordinates written on it. A solid lead if you ask me. Now I know for a fact a lot of people agree that solid leads can be found written on scrap bits of paper because I use a similar bait technique to lure in my victims by sellotaping my phone number to toilet stalls and strip clubs. You'd be disappointed in the desperation of humanity if you saw how many calls I get a day. Each sector in Everspace, not strip club toilet stalls, stop thinking about that, we're moving on now. It's set out like Fast and Light. You start on the left of the sector's star map, then you choose which route you wish to take to get to the end of the sector, which is on the far right. Now, when you get to the end of the sector, you would then use a hyper jump to travel to the next sector. Each jump you make across the star map costs you fuel, so you have to make sure that you have siphoned every unguarded car on your way to ensure that your murder spree across the outback can continue. If you don't have enough fuel, I'd advise finding a fit woman to beg fat old men at petrol stations for some. However, if your blow up doll is currently filled with holes, then you're shit out of luck, you're going to have to hyper jump without fuel. Doing this carries a high probability of damaging your ship's components somehow. I never would have guessed that fuel was vital to the integrity of spaceship parts. How do my weapons or scanners get damaged because the fuel tank is empty? A car's CD player doesn't stop working because the car has no fuel. However, without allowing the player to jump without fuel, you would be left stranded in space with your hazards on, leaving you with one option to end the run: flying out of orbit. This is where you will find out that your AI helper will destroy your ship and act like it was your fault. Why the helpful AI does this abrupt 180 is not explained, but then again maybe it was. You see, I don't listen to people, especially if they say I can't do something because it's dangerous. All I know is that a lot of people flip out for no reason, and I got smacked a lot as a kid. But why didn't the devs have the rebels fly in and shoot the player down, with the reasoning that you become visible on all scanners when you leave orbit? The only conclusion I can come up with is that they are foreshadowing that AI is going to go guilty spark on us at some point. I bring up these petty points because the game does a good job of answering and explaining most of my questions, sometimes with genuinely good humour. However, I'm a little prick who has to pick holes in everything. I just can't let anything go without something being wrong with it.
There was a way to halt its progress, but it would take time. All I could do was set the wheels in motion and await the outcome in stasis. A long, uncertain sleep.
So Everspace is like all roguelikes in that you start out like a fresh fish walking into the Shawshank. You're going to make a lot of new friends and all of them are going to take advantage of you.
They call me the pumper, and I'll be your friend.
It won't take long from being passed around like a luxury soap in the showers that you realise that you need to become a beefcake to get some goddamn respect around here. For you see, no one in your new world cares that you can do sciencey stuff, all they care about is that you have the tightest hole and the least amount of resistance. The best way to avoid being passed around like a luxury soap is to collect as many credits as you can, just like in real life. Your credits are used to buy upgrades, which are collected by destroying ships and completing various tasks. Most of the upgrades are passive stat boosts, but some unlock new abilities and resources. Other upgrades are specific to your ship. As you can imagine, there's quite a lot to unlock. Not only are there upgrades and ships to buy, but you also can unlock enhancements, blueprints, loadouts and colours. There's more, but you get the picture. There's a lot of shit. I'm very happy to see that Everspace hasn't erected a paywall for any of the customizations or upgrades via bullshit microtransactions or in-game currency. Sadly, these days, that not only needs to be mentioned, but it deserves a standing fucking ovation. What squalor we live in. People applauding no bullshit in games is like going gooey-eyed and saying thank you every time the cashier doesn't spit on you and call you scum when you pick up your weekly cheap frozen pizzas and beers, though in that case you deserve to be spat on. You are in fact fucking scum. But in Everspace's case it gets better because not only does it not have any bullshit monetization, it also doesn't make the game grindy as hell. I'm looking at you, World War Z. Customizations and unlocks can be achieved without a skin-shredding, tedious slog uphill. The game does a good job of drip feeding all customizations and upgrades, while offering an engaging story and side missions. While I was playing it, I never felt that I was starving for new toys to play with, nor did I feel that I was being buried by mass quantities of slightly insignificantly better ones. Upgrades to your standard shield and weapons can only be kept for a playthrough. When you die and restart the game, your ship starts with the basic equipment from your selected default loadout. To upgrade your equipment, you'll need to gather resources out in space. This is another thing I like about the game. The loadouts make it easy to remember what resources I need to gather to upgrade my equipment. The basic shield and weapons need very similar materials to upgrade them, so for the most part you'll need to remember 3 resources to upgrade everything. Everspace has also made a simple user interface. It's all straightforward, easy to understand and navigate through, unlike other space sims that should come with a Haynes fucking manual. This means you're not wasting lots of time finicking about through menus to try and optimize your ship by 0.005%. You're actually out in space doing fun space stuff, instead of comparing figures on glossed up spreadsheets. I'm going to give you 2 helpful tips before you start playing the game. First of all, you want to put it on easy, because Everspace is a roguelike. It is designed to have multiple playthroughs building up from the easy setting. Best to progress as the game intends you to, there's no need to swim against the current. If you do, then you'll find that you will get to a point that you simply can't progress past because you aren't geared up enough. I made this mistake by playing the game on normal. I could get to the 5th sector, but I just kept hitting the wall after this point. Yes, it's true, on normal you get an extra 25% credits, but you will earn much more by putting it on easy, because simply you can get further in the game. You can kill more enemies and have more freedom to putt about and collect resources, such as credits, materials, weapons and shields, which in turn tool you up to take on harder enemies later on. Now on normal you get less of an opportunity to explore. Enemies are more active in their approach in hunting you down, and obviously they are harder. That being said, don't get the impression that you're just going to walk through the game because it's on easy. The later stages can be a real struggle with a ship that has limited upgrades. Overall, the balance on easy is pretty good. Also, the enemies spawn in more reasonably. There are sections that have no enemies, so you can explore more of what's kicking around, and there's always something interesting to find. Unlike on the harder settings, which is pretty much swarming with arseholes in every sector. Eventually you're just going to have to run away from them. Even on normal, enemies can be relentless, spawning in endless ships. I once got destroyed at the very beginning of a playthrough because wave after wave of enemies just kept coming. Each wave got harder and harder until I literally could not do any damage to them. After this, the game seemed to be satisfied that I knew who the daddy was around here, because on the next run I got near to the end of the game with far less resistance. So there is a bit of inconsistency in regards to the difficulty spikes. Personally, I think the easy setting has the best balance. It feels more immersive because the NPC's activities is spread more sporadically, making the game more believable. Some sectors have ragtag rebels flying around, others have the private military doing their mining operations, and as I said earlier, some sectors have no one in at all. My second bit of advice is to prioritise spending your credits on the perk that gives you an extra increased percentage on credits collected. It's pretty obvious why this perk is the best to max out first. The more credits you have, the quicker you will progress. Moving on to the controls, I like that they're simple, very similar to No Man's Sky, which makes the game more approachable for everyone. I was a bit concerned before I bought the game that it was going to be like Elite Dangerous, in that it would take some time getting used to the controls with the help of a Haynes manual, with basic things later becoming a tedious chore. Like picking up resources by manually opening a cargo door, gauging the trajectory of something floating in space with the ship's speed, constantly making minor adjustments inch by inch, to finally pick the thing up. After hours of doing this and other routine things, it does grate on one's patience. Thankfully, Everspace noticed that, and decided to go for an arcade approach. My main reason for liking Everspace is that it offers variety with new and interesting things that are drip-fed at a good pace, without the tediousness of long journeys or the necessity to spend long periods of time mining resources to build things. Though Everspace does have mining and building in the game, to me it never felt like it was a chore, because the resources needed to upgrade equipment are easy to remember, and the scanners quickly tell me all of the resources that are kicking about. So I never wasted time searching every inch of space to hopefully find what I needed. Nothing is more frustrating than searching for something in large areas for hours on end. Everspace agrees that this is bollocks and that a space game should focus on combat and a story. Everspace also understands that upgrades should be available through progression with little effort needed to find resources, rather than rewarding the kind of person that can be asked to literally search the whole of space for them. Overall, I had more fun with Everspace than I did with No Man's Sky or Elite Dangerous, though I played it for much less time than the both of them. One of the reasons for this is because Everspace has taken a different approach to space. Instead of making space as big as possible, Everspace has made it smaller. Initially this sounds bad because people have been hoodwinked into thinking bigger is better. Well, Everspace is a grower, not a shower. It simply cuts out all of the boring stuff space games have as a consequence for being as big as possible. This results in the player never being far from something fun and engaging. This ethos has been carried throughout the entirety of the game, including the menu layout. It's simple to navigate through, never bogging the player down with petty percentage comparisons or too many sections and submenus. My initial thought of navigating the menus was, wow, a space game can make everything straightforward. It's not making me jump through hoops to do a basic mod or an upgrade. I think that the combat is up to a high standard. It delivers excitement and challenges, offering the player loads of weapons and gadgets to play with. Also, by adopting the fast and light travel mechanism, progressing through the game requires little brain power, which if you've ever played No Man's Sky or Elite Dangerous, you will be familiar with the feeling of having no direction, which can get frustrating. Basically, it's a game that you can't get lost on or be at a loss with. It's perfect for playing while having a few beers.
Strange. Fragments of memories. Trying to make sense of them.
Overall, Everspace is a good space sim. If you played Elite Dangerous but stopped because you found it too complicated or long-winded, I would recommend having a look at this. I would also recommend Everspace to those who got burnt on No Man's Sky and can't be asked to go back to it. As far as criticisms go, I can't really find anything significant to bring up, though I do find it funny that the private military don't give a shit if you steal materials from their mining drills. But I suppose checkout staff don't really give a shit if you steal their company's plastic bags either. For those that have Game Pass, you'll be happy to know that Everspace is currently on there. However, this leads me to the biggest issue I have with the game. Its standard asking price of 25 quid. 25 quid roughly puts it at the same price for downloading No Man's Sky or Elite Dangerous. And I can't help but say I think people will get more bang for their buck buying No Man's Sky. Though Elite also has more depth than Everspace, No Man's Sky is a closer comparison, in that both are casual space games. On a side note, No Man's Sky can be picked up from CEX for about 12 quid. If I was asked for my advice on which one to buy, I'd say if you want a streamlined arcadey experience shooting ships in space while following a decent story, get Everspace. If you want to fly about space discovering creatures on various planets while spending lots of time upgrading, mining and building shit, with the option to play with friends online, go get No Man's Sky. If you want more of a realistic space sim experience with little hand holding and a few learning curves, but offers a true reward for many hours of genuine effort, get Elite. However, most people are going to gravitate towards the more casual experience. I managed to get Everspace on sale from the PS Store for about 6 quid with the Encounters DLC. For that price the game is a gem, but if I were to put a price on the game which I think reflects the fun I got out of it, I'd say Everspace is worth the price of a mid-tier indie game. I would have been happy to part with 16 quid for it. In my opinion, it shouldn't cost the same as No Man's Sky. I think if you're unsure about getting it, first I would advise waiting for Game Pass to do one of its 1 quid a month deals, or wait until it goes on sale again. Games typically do the rounds of going on sale. If you do manage to see it for about 16 quid, I'd highly recommend picking it up. It is overall a great game.